Good evening, and thank you for joining me, Sam Paton, at Scotland at 7 this evening, and for tonight's stories. As always, we start with the coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,910,765 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,685,082 people have been confirmed negative, 225,683 have been tested positive. There are 178 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There are 5 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 7,659 people. This number only includes those who have died receiving a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 70 of those were in hospital last night, 12 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. today, 2,796,810 people have received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 1,184,629 have received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show 127,502 patients who have tested positive of COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 22 from yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals, and our thoughts are with those who have lost family and loved ones. And on to our next story about the election. SNP publishes 100 days plan to protect Scotland and kickstart the recovery. Nicola Sturgeon has today published a plan detailing just some of the actions a re-elected SNP government would take within 100 days to keep Scotland safe during the pandemic and help kickstart a sustainable recovery. The plan, titled First Steps, sets out key actions to tackle the pandemic, support the NHS, invest in jobs and young people, and support families and tackle the climate crisis. Launching the plan on a visit to Aberdeenshire West, Nicola Sturgeon said that the 100-day plan demonstrates the SNP is the only party that is serious about government and serious about helping people in Scotland through these difficult times. The First Minister said that with an SNP government, Scotland will be able to make a real progress through and out of the pandemic in the first 100 days. With a pay rise for NHS workers, a new cancer centres opened, support for small businesses to go digital, new training courses to help young people into jobs, and immediate action to tackle the climate crisis. The plan promises urgent action to support children, families and young people, completing the rollout of 1,140 hours of free childcare, expanding free child meals, paying the first instalment of the expanded 1 billion Scottish Attainment Fund, and introducing the legal changes to extend free bus travel to everyone under 22 years old. Work will also start work on longer-term challenges, established a new council and for economic transformation, taking the first steps towards establishing a national care service and beginning the work on a minimum income guarantee. Ms Sturgeon said that if Scotland had the full powers of an independent country, then her government could do so much more, and Scotland would no longer be subject to Westminster governments taking our country in the wrong direction. Stick Sticking with the election, Scottish Greens pledge more opportunities for young people. The Scottish Greens have pledged to build on free bus travel to provide more opportunities for young people in the next Parliament. Free bus travel for everyone under 22 will come in this year, and the Scottish Green Party say that they will build on that after May the 6th by pushing for free travel for rail and ferries too, as well as increasing funding for colleges so they can expand bursaries and 16 and 17-year-olds and reintroduce part-time courses. Scottish Greens will also increase support for apprenticeships and ensure they pay at least the living wage regardless of age. Commenting, Scottish Greens co-leader Patrick Harvie said that free bus travel for young people is a transformational policy, not just tackling household poverty and the climate emergency, but also for opening up opportunities for young people to travel and study, and he said that they are determined to build on that so that public transport reaches communities it currently does not. And the Scottish Greens are committed to delivering the college places and apprenticeships young people will need that public transport to get to. Mr Harvie committed to giving college education parity with university. He said that means expanding access to bursaries, removing financial barriers which prevent many people from accessing further education. Colleges should be able to offer the flexibility of part-time courses like they used to, so people can balance them with working, and apprenticeships should come with a commitment to pay the living wage. And sticking with the election, Douglas Ross, engulfed in Tory cronyism. The SNP has accused Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross of being engulfed in Tory cronyism after admitting to directing thousands of pounds of taxpayers' money to a personal friend when he was an MSP. In an interview with the Herald, Douglas Ross confirmed he used Holyrood expenses footed by the taxpayer to cover £7,000 worth of rent on an Edinburgh flat which was half owned by a refereeing colleague. The property in question, valued at £265,000, was initially bought by Ross referee chum Hugh Dallas and another individual in December 2016. The revelation comes amid an ongoing scandal engulfing the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who reportedly failed to declare payments for the refurbishment of his Downing Street flat. And now for our next story. SNP demand full disclosure on Tory sleaze. SNP Westminster Deputy Leader Kirsten Oswald has called for Boris Johnson and Tory HQ to retain and publish all correspondence relating to the Prime Minister's dodgy donor flat renovation, after the Electoral Commission launched an investigation with reasonable grounds to suspect the law has been broken. Her call comes as UK government sources told The Times the worry is that there could have been a paper trail. There was a very limited number of people who knew about the funding arrangements at CCHQ. It is not clear how this will end. The SNP is concerned that there could be a Tory shredding operation underway after Boris Johnson failed to publish his correspondence on COVID contracts, despite promising Parliament he would do so immediately at Prime Minister's questions on the 21st of April. I would have been better off going to IKEA for this flat, I'm telling you, IKEA. Right, next for the next story. And we are not sponsored by IKEA, by the way, but I just think that, yeah, for the Prime Minister, he could have went to IKEA and got a deal. So So now, Brexit, no gain and a world of pain for Scots exers. Johnson's short Brexit deal has meant no gain and a world of pain for Scotland's exporters, according to industry experts, responding to a new report which warns that UK businesses have been put at a competitive disadvantage after Brexit. The Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Committee report concludes that new trade banners facing small seafood and meat export businesses could render them unviable, and factories and jobs may relocate to the EU. James Withers, the Chief Executive of Scotland Food and Drink, claims that Scottish exporters are currently facing a raft of trade barriers for no gain and a world of pain due to UK government inaction. He added that doing business with European partners has become costly, complex, slower and high risk, and described the disillusionment of many food exporters in Scotland. Now for our next story. The EU should hang out the welcome sign for an independent Scotland. A week before the Scottish parliamentary elections, more than 170 prominent European writers, artists and cultural figures have sent an open letter published in The Guardian. Liberatio Domano Publico Politicum and Critica Politica today, my apologies if I mispronounced any of those, calling on Europeans everywhere to join them in telling the Scottish people they would be welcome back in the EU if they so wish. The signatories come from every single EU member state and all UK nations. Among them are some of the world's leading philosophers, political thinkers, as well as award-winning European novelists, actors and musicians. The letter continues to say that in the 2016 Brexit referendum, not a single Scottish district voted to leave, and Scotland as a whole voted by a 62% majority to remain in the EU. In subsequent years, the Scottish Parliament rejected the withdrawal process at every stage. Yet in 2020, Scotland was taken out of the European Union. The letter asks the heads of the EU nations and the institutions to reach out in solidarity to Scots who look set to elect a pro-independence majority in the elections in Scottish Parliament next week. It calls on them to recognise Scotland's special position in making a generous and also unilateral and open offer of membership ahead of any independence referendum to ensure that the Scottish voters can make an informed choice between two unions. The full text of the letter and the list of over 170 signatories can be found on europeforscotland.com website, where you can also add your signature in support of Scotland's place in the EU. So after the show, pop over and add your signature. Now for our next story. NatWest threatened to move headquarters from Scotland in the event of independence. NatWest have threatened to move its headquarters out of Scotland in the event of a vote in favour of independence. Its CEO, Alison Rose, said only days before the elections for the Holyrood Parliament. The UK government backed NatWest, which until last year was still called the Royal Bank of Scotland, following the 2007 to 2009 financial crash. The Royal Bank had previously threatened to move its registered office to London ahead of the 2014 independence referendum. But Rosie's comments are her first substantive remarks on the issue since becoming CEO in 2019. The SNP's Ivan McKee said that the SNP is focused on getting Scotland through and out of the pandemic and into recovery, as the plans we have set out today for the first 100 days of an SNP government show. Mr McKee said that Scotland's future is for the people of Scotland to decide, and as the Chief Executive of the NatWest Group makes clear, the bank is not talking about moving its operations but simply its registered address. The Royal Bank of Scotland has been based for 294 years in Edinburgh. Now we're heading over to America now for our next story, Biden's speech to Congress. President Joe Biden proposed a sweeping new $1.8 trillion plan in a speech to a joint session of Congress last night, pleading with Republican lawmakers to work with him on divisive issues to meet the stiff competition posed by China. Pushing a vision of more government investment funded by the wealthy, the president urged Republicans who have so far resolutely opposed him to pass a wide array of contentious legislation, from taxes to police reform to gun control and immigration. Republicans largely sat silently during the speech, while Democrats applauded as Biden spoke. Biden, who took office in January, also made an impassioned plea to raise taxes on corporations and rich Americans to help pay for his $1.8 trillion American Families Plan. It's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to pay their fair share. Just pay their fair share, Biden said. He made his plea in the House of Representatives at an event scaled back this year because of the pandemic, removing his mask to speak to a group of about 200 Democrat and Republican lawmakers and other officials and guests. President Biden's address to Congress broke a historic glass ceiling as two women, Vice President Kamala Harris and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, sat behind the president for the first time in US history. The seating arrangement carried a symbolic meaning for the advancement of the US women in recent decades, since Harris and Pelosi stand first and second in the presidential line of succession, respectively. Harris, the first woman and first Black and Asian person to serve as Vice President, sat to Biden's right. Pelosi, who became the first woman Speaker of the House of Representatives in 2007, sat to his left. Now, staying with America, 3 Georgia men charged with hate crimes in Ahmaud Arbery death. Ahmaud Arbery. US prosecutors have charged 3 men in Georgia with federal hate crimes and attempted kidnapping in last year's killing of Ahmaud Arbery, a black man who was gunned down as he was out jogging through a Serbian neighbourhood. The Justice Department said that former police officer Gregory McMichael, 65, his son Travis McMichael, 35, and William Roddy Bryan, 31, were each charged with 1 count of interference with rights and with 1 count of attempted kidnapping. Travis and Gregory McMichael were also each charged with using firearms to carry out acts of violence in the fatal shooting of Arbery in February 2020, which lawyers for his family have condemned as vigilante murder tantamount to a lynching. President Biden's administration has stepped up enforcement of the federal civil rights laws, which activists complained were neglected during the Trump presidency. The McMichaels and Bryan already face state criminal charges of murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit a felony through no trial date, though no trial date has been set. Civil rights advocates have accused authorities of being slow to seek justice in the case, with no arrests made for 10 weeks after the incident, and then only a video footage of the shooting emerged on social media, stoking public outrage over the killing. The McMichaels told police on the scene that they suspected Arbery was involved in a string of neighbourhood burglaries when they spotted him running through the community, and said they chased him down in their pickup to make a citizen's arrest. The video showed Arbery jogging down a two-lane street and then being shot with a rifle as he was confronted by two armed men who had stopped their pickup in his path. And now, that is just horrendous. The Pooh family. Now for the next story. Threat sent to race equality group after criticism by Tory MPs. When a government think tank was just 8 full-time... Oh, sorry, my apologies. I need to start that again. I misled the whole line. When an equality think tank with just 8 full-time staff added its voice to criticism of the government's recent race report, it probably didn't expect to become a lightning rod for hate mail and threats, or find itself at the centre of a culture war between right-wing politicians and charities. In what has been described as a full-scale campaign to silence criticism and discredit of any dissenting voices, a group of Tory MPs from the Conservative Common Sense group attacked the Runnymede Trust after it became one of the more vocal critics of the government's controversial Sewell report. The Trust had delivered an open letter and petition to Downing Street urging Boris Johnson to reject the findings of the Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities and instead implement recommendations from previous reviews. This was the cue for some Tory MPs, led by the veteran Conservative Minister Sir John Hayes, to write to the Charity Commission demanding an investigation into the race equality think tank. Hayes and his parliamentary fellows claimed the Trust was pursuing a political agenda. Referring to the Runnymede, Hayes also asked the Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch, to make representations across the government to stop the worthless work of organisations often publicly funded and promulgating weird woke ideas, and in doing so seeding doubt and fear, and more than that, disharmony and disunity. The Charity Commission duly announced that it was considering whether to launch such an investigation, and during a debate in the House of Commons, Badenoch defended the review and instead accused the critics of bad faith attempts to undermine the credibility of the report, saying Runnymede was part of a climate of intimidation around those involved with it. Now Sir Clive Jones, a Runnymede trustee who was awarded a knighthood for services to humanitarian causes in the 2019 Queen's birthday honours, has revealed that its staff have been subjected to hate mails and threats. The threatening phone calls and mail began almost immediately after the charity established in 1968 to improve public education on race. Criticised the Sewell report, but now there are fears that the move by the Conservative MPs could embolden the perpetrators of this abuse. The main focus of the hate and threats has been the Trust Chief Executive Halima Begum, but the other staff have also been subjected to threats. Now, call to rename Snowdonia. Welsh. So next story. Welsh County Councillor John Pugh Roberts has I was right the first time. John Pugh Roberts has brought forward a motion calling for Snowdonia National Park Authority to use Aerwythfa, and I hope I have pronounced that properly, the Welsh name for Wales' highest mountain instead of the English name of Snowdon. There has been growing concern amongst Welsh language champions as they fear a loss of traditional place names. Roberts feels that it's important to keep old Welsh place names to keep the history and heritage of Wales alive. The motion was considered at a meeting on Wednesday. However, there is yet to be a decision. Snowdonia National Park Authority Chair Vin Ellis-Jones said the authority members decided that there is no need to consider the motion today as a Welsh place names task group has been appointed. The task group is to examine whether the English name should remain or be replaced by its Welsh name, Aerwythfa. I actually think that sounds better, Aerwythfa. Aerwythfa means grave, and according to myth, the giant beast Rita Gaw was buried on the mountain after his legendary battle with King Arthur. A member of the Welsh Language Society has said that part of visiting a country is the experience the joys of the living culture that the country has to offer. Fred Francis said it is not only Snowdon, Aerwythfa, but our country is Cymru, not Wales. So I agree. Aerwythfa, that sounds so much better than Snowdon. So I agree. So that's us for this evening. Thank you so much for joining me. And this is where I plead for your help. If you would like to support us, you can do it by subscribing to Broadcasting Scotland, and you can do so online there. And we are also looking for volunteers to help us out. We are getting a great team of volunteers together at the moment, and we want to add more to the team. So please get involved. And even if you think you don't have the skills, that's amazing. You probably do have without realising. So please get involved, and there's our details on the screen. And for me this evening, thank you very much for joining me, and make sure you join in tomorrow evening again at 7 p.m. And thank you and take care.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.